Hello. So I'm a little bit early, and this is the Skep Making Challenge, day 1. So if you're here, then do comment. Let me know who you are. It'd be really good to see who's joining me this morning. I will be recording this so that it will be put up in the group for those of you who've missed the live. So if you're watching on replay, just do #replay. You can type any questions in the comments and I will then answer them at the end of this little session, but I'll also answer them in the comments. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'd really love to know why you have decided to join the Skep Making Challenge. I know that many people who have signed up for it are actually at work and so not able to join the lives, but will be watching later on the replay. So let me know why you've decided to join the Skep Challenge. If you've ever made a Skep before, I'd really love to know who's made Skeps before, who is completely new to this, and yeah, let's just see who's joining us. So I'll talk a bit about what it is you need to make a Skep, what a Skep is, and all we need to do for today's challenge. So there's 3 live videos that I'll be doing, taking you through the steps of how to make a Skep. So there's 3 main steps. So there's a starter, there's the stitching in the middle, and then there's completing it. So I'm keeping it very simple, very basic. I will be offering prizes for those of you who take part. So seeing your images and how you're getting on and the interaction in the group will be brilliant. And that will really help me to know what you need to know and what you're interested in and just see how you're all doing. This is the first time I've done a Skep tuition online. I've taught people how to make Skeps all over the place, but always one-to-one or in groups. And so teaching people online is a whole different experience, both for the student and for me, because I can't get that instant response. So type in here, let me know who you are, whereabouts in the world you are, and why you're interested in making a Skep. So anybody who's joining who really is an absolute beginner, this is a straw Skep. Now, you may or may not have used one, you may or may not have seen one, but it's actually woven out of straw. And where I live in the West Country, it's thatching straw. In other parts of the UK, it'd be made out of rye straw. But traditionally, they're made all around the world, and it's a basic weaving basket technique, and that's what I'm going to teach you. So you could use a lot of the techniques for making baskets out of rope, out of other grasses, even recycled fabrics, recycled carrier bags, whatever. So this is a really transferable skill. And what I'm going to teach you today is how to make one of these. So this is the starter. Now, those of you who bought my kits, I have a basic kit which I was sending out ready for the challenge, and that includes enough straw to make a Skep, the lapping cane, which is what you use to stitch the Skep, and one of these, which is a fid, which you can use for stitching. And then I also have another kit which actually has the starter in. So those of you who've got the starter can just watch this today. You can have a go at making one, or you can wait until tomorrow's live and then you can just carry on with the stitching. So I'm going to teach you how to get started. Now, this is the hardest thing of all. And normally when I do a physical course, then what I do is I give everybody one of these to start, and then we spend a day just stitching, just weaving the baskets. And then when you finished your basket, or towards the end of the second day, then I'll teach you how to make a starter. So you go away with a finished Skep and a starter, or an almost finished Skep, and then a starter, so you know how to get going when you get home. So the idea is that you keep making Skeps. Now, I love weaving Skeps, and for me, it's the connection between my life as an artist. It's a way of my creativity coming through into the beekeeping. And to me, being able to make a Skep was really important to be able to call myself a beekeeper. I had to have at least made a skep. And I was really inspired by a lady who ended up being my teacher for skep making called Diana Robertson, who's also in Somerset. And I used to watch her weaving skeps at the Bath and West show. And so I was lucky enough to go on her course, and she taught me how to make it. And then since then, I've learned from all kinds of different skep makers all around the world. So there's people weaving skeps, weaving sun hives, weaving just baskets. And now I've been speaking a lot with Americans, and over there's quite tight restrictions about keeping bees in hives without frames. And I will talk about this during the challenge. But what I'm encouraging you to do is that you make a skep, and primarily to use it for catching swarms. So when you have a swarm in a tree, you can catch it in the skep. You turn the skep upside down. Once you've got the majority of the swarm in, lay it on top of a tablecloth, and then you just leave it for an hour or two, and the bees will follow the queen and go inside the skep. Then you can wrap it up with a sheet, with a tablecloth or sheet, and then you can walk them into your hive. I do keep bees in skeps, and I know that there are quite a few beekeepers, particularly in the UK, and of course in Asia, Africa, who still use straw skeps and keep their bees in them. So the main reason for doing this is to have a bit of fun through lockdown. So if you've got the weekend free, even if you're working today or tomorrow, you've still got enough time over the weekend to weave your skep. And if the weather's like it is today and it's nice and sunny, then it's super to do it outside, because it is a bit messy, because straw just makes a mess. So the things you need are your straw, you need some lapping cane, and you need a fid. Then what you can also use, which you won't need yet, is you need a guide, so that when you start weaving, so this is a sun hive that I'm working on. So this has a different starter. This has a wooden starter that you can start threading into. Then traditionally you use a bit of cow horn. And what this does is just keeps your bundle of straw together. Now, instead of using cow horns, you can use a napkin ring. I just happen to have a silver one on hand, but you don't have to use a silver one. You could use a wooden one. And if you use certain loo roll suppliers, this is from a company called Who Gives a Crap, and they have really rigid loo rolls. And this is ideal for a guide. It's the same size as the napkin ring. So all you want to do is just cut it in half, and you've got two guides. So there's no excuse. You can actually use anything, or you could use elastic bands just to hold this together. So I really wanted to make it accessible. You don't have to have all the kit, but it does help if you've got the straw, and it's a lot easier if you've got the lapping cane and if you've actually got a metal fid. So have a look on my website, or have a look, I'll add later on the comments below. So if you'd like to get a kit before the weekend, then I do still have a few left. So I'm going to show you how to make a starter. Now, there are different people have different methods, and there's no right or wrong. And you'll find that the more you do, you'll tweak things and you'll change things. So when I started off, I was taught that you soak everything, and you soak the straw, because you can see it's quite brittle, and we're going to have to bend it. Now, another thing you can do instead of soaking it, because you need a trough that's quite long, because the straw is quite long, is you can just crush it. So you can either stand on it, or you can do what I'm doing now. It's just working it with your fingers, just so that when you start twisting it, it's less likely to snap or make rigid corners. My first skep ended up being hexagonal in shape, and it takes quite a bit of skill and practice to be able to get them really round. But I thought hexagonal was fine. It's the shape of the bees. So I've got here about 20 of the sheets of corn, the sticks of corn. Now you'll find they can get a bit scruffy. You can have shaggy ends, and I have tidied this one up a bit. And it's quite nice to tidy them up. Otherwise you end up with quite hairy, messy skeps, which doesn't worry me if you're just using it for collecting your swarms. But it's if you want to start entering competitions or doing really neat baskets, then it's a good idea to clean it off and take off any ears, any of the seed heads. Right, and then what you need is some lapping cane. Now in the set we've got all different lengths, and lapping cane is actually rattan, and this has a curved side and a flat side. So as I turn that round, you can see. Now I have soaked this because this can get quite brittle if it's too dry, and it does make it a bit easier. The other thing you can do is have an old water bottle or a cleaning bottle and just put some water in it. So if you need to soak things while you're working, you can just spray it like that, and that will keep it nice and damp. You'll notice I've got an apron on that is waterproof, because otherwise if I'm spraying or working, then I get a bit soggy, and particularly on my lap. So it's quite good to have an apron on. But as I said earlier, if you can work outside, then that's better. Right, so this is the hardest thing to do. So don't worry if it doesn't work out how you want it to start with. And I'm going to do my best to show you. So the first thing to do is take your lapping cane and place it underneath your straw, like that. And you've squeezed your straw so it's quite flat, quite flexible. Have the flat end of your lapping cane against the straw, so the curved edges out. Now you want to keep a piece sticking out, and then with your longer end, just wrap it around. And wrap it round about 3 times. And it's quite good then to put it under your foot so you can hold it still. Now we want to tuck in this end. So what I'm going to do, I want that end quite tight, so hold it with those fingers. And I'm going to tuck it back through there, through the first loop, pressing it flat so it creases, pulling it as tight as I can, and then, so like that, just tucking it through. Then I'm going to fold it back. So there we go, fold it back and tuck it through the next 2 wraps. And what that will do is just help you keep it secure. And then I'm going to twist, keep twisting. Until I've got a bit. So you've got a bit at the end which has got no lapping cane around it, and then we've got these bits, and then just practice bending it. Now what we want to do is make it into a little circle. So I'm just going to go around a few more times, just trying to keep it as tight onto the straw as I can. And when I think I've got enough, I'm just going to twist it round so that I have it in a circle. Okay, so I'm holding it with my fingers. Then with this lapping cane, with the 2 ends, I'm just going to tuck that through. And I'm just using my fingers now to tuck it through. So it is fiddly. And then again with my fingers, I'm just going to tuck it through to the next one. Now you'll find that some of your cane will get a bit loose, so just pull it round so that you can get it nice and tight. So it's really important that you get your cane as tight as you can at this early stage. So just pulling it through. So there we go. And then you can shape it, make it as a nice circle. Now what you could do is you could slide this over a broom handle, but I do find you need an extra pair of hands. It can get a bit tricky. So here we go. So I've got my straw coming out at the end. I'm holding it together. I couldn't leave it alone at the moment. It would all untangle. So I'm just going to do, I'm going to tuck this through there. And now, because the straw is going to start running out, I have to keep adding some straw. So I've got a bunch of straw here. Again, you see I've got some hairy edges, so I'll just pull those off to make it a bit neater. And you've got two ends. You've got the ends with the seed heads on, and then you've got a slightly thicker end. And it's the thicker end that you use to thread in. So I don't need that many to start with. I'm just going to put in about 4 or 5. So taking my starter, so you need a bit of space. I get tangled up here. And you want to insert your new bits into the middle. You see, because that way, if you're lucky, it will actually go into the stitching, and that will hold it secure. But you'll find it'll be dropping out, and that's why it's important that you keep adding straw. Otherwise, you'll just run out. You'll suddenly be stitching away, and you'll find it's all run out. So when you feel, so I'm still using my hands here, and each stitch I'm just going to add a couple more strands. I'm sure this looks a lot messier on screen than it does when you're in person. You need a lot of space, which is why it's a good thing to do in the autumn and sit outside and enjoy the sunshine. So there we go. Now my stitches are getting loose again, but they will, you can fiddle with it, pulling them round just to try and keep them as tight as I can. And just using your fingers, threading it through, so I'm not using the fid yet. There we go. It's getting to look a bit more round. I'm just going to do a couple more stitches or twisting round just with my hands. Again, pulling it nice and tight. And this is incredibly therapeutic. Once you've got a starter going, you just get taken away. It's just wonderful. You get whisked away and just enjoying making your skep. But as I said before, this is the trickiest bit. But like all things, once you know how, it gets easier. So I've almost got 2 rounds. I keep adding, just putting in 2 or 3. There we go. And it is getting nice and tight now. Just going to add a few more. Each stitch adding 3, and you're gradually going to get it thicker and thicker. So in the end, you could be adding 10 pieces of wheat each time. So trying to keep it nice and flexible still, making sure I'm pulling this tight. So you might find when you first start doing this, you'll get really achy hands because you're using muscles that we don't get to use very often. Not unless you do craft work or perhaps play a musical instrument, but even then you'll be using muscles that are perhaps a bit different to the ones you're used to. So there we go, twisting it round. There we are. Now I'm going to show you the first stitches. So it depends whether you're left or right-handed. Now, I am, as my father's always said, I'm cat-handed. So I find sometimes I'm making a skep right-handed, sometimes I'm making it left-handed. But to teach, I've had to try and become a bit more aware about what I'm doing. So what I have found is I am mainly right-handed. So I'm holding my knot like that. So I've got 3 fingers through the actual hole. I've got my cane is coming away from me, and I've got my thumb on the straw. Now, as I look at this, I want to do my next stitch. And so what I want to do is put my fid into the straw, and then it goes through, coming out after the next stitch. So you're putting it in at an angle, and the fid is great because you can slide in this cane and then it comes out the other side. And then what that does is you pull the stitch and it pulls the straw round. So I'm just going to twist it round. I'll put a couple more bits of straw in. So if you've got a starter already, this is where you'll start, is you just start with your stitching. So I'm going to put some more straw always into the middle so that it's going in to the stitch. Now then, you can see it's a bit difficult to see the stitches, but I'm going to go in there and you see the stitch just to my closest to me. I go in at an angle so that my fid comes out the other side of that stitch. And then I thread this through. Ooh, it's springy. And it does get a lot easier once you get going. Then it gets very, very simple, very easy to do. So there we go. Now it's going to be a bit easier to see the stitching. I've got a double stitch there because that's near my beginning. Be careful not to stab yourself. But I'm going to poke it through the straw so you can see it comes either side of the stitch. And then thread the lapping cane through, pull it tight, and you can bend your straw. Now my straw's got a bit dry, so I can just give it a little bit of a spray, making sure that you pull your cane nice and tight. Again, not too tight because it'll snap, but just nice and tight. Now then, you can see that stitch, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to come out between those 2 stitches there. So I'll go in there and then out through the gap in between them. Put the cane through, and that's your basic stitching. Now, quite a lot of the things I'm going to show you, I will repeat because you'll come across them at different times. So the trick now is to go round doing your stitching. So if you're part of the challenge, this is all you need to do. But what you might find is you've done it and you just want to carry on. So you just carry on doing the stitch in between each previous stitch. So you're going halfway through the last bundle. So you're sort of you're spiraling round, and so you go in halfway through the last one and you come out the other side, so you can see where my fid is coming out. I then put the cane through, pull it tight, and then just make sure everything is round. You can sort of curve it, you can move your stitches along to make them a bit more even. Make sure you keep pulling them tight. And then I'm going to go in again to the next stitch about halfway, and you'll see it coming through. Now the bit I'm going to show you two things now. So I've nearly run out of lapping cane. And this next bit, again, can be a bit tricky and you'll find your own way. But as I'm getting bigger, I need to control this. So this is where you either add your elastic band, your cow horn, or your silver napkin ring. And you want to get it in while you're still quite small, because otherwise, once you have about 50 pieces of straw, it's quite hard to thread through. You could also cut the neck of a plastic bottle, if you have a plastic bottle, a plastic water bottle, because that will give you a guide. The good thing about a plastic water bottle is it flares out, and this is what's good about the bone, is it flares out, so it keeps it small there, and then you've got a bit more room at the top. But a napkin ring is absolutely fine. And that was the idea of a lovely lady who was on my course in Devon in 2019. And she came in on day 2 with a wooden napkin ring. And we were like, oh, what a brilliant idea. So there we go. So you can see I've got a bit of a way to go. I'm still not quite thick enough. So I've now got that guide, so I can be tucking straw in as I go, and it'll get a bit thicker. So I'm going to add a few more pieces now. Again, keeping them tidy as I go. Now what I'll do is I will talk about the prizes for the winners. You could win a free place on my Skep making course, which will start on the 24th of November. So that will be a bit more intensive and a bit more detailed, and you'll actually have access to it forever. And there's lots of videos about all the different bits and different skills that you could have. So you could win a place on that. You could win a kit. So you could win everything you need to make your own Skep. And I've also got books, tea towels. So I've got various categories. So it'd be really good if you're helping other people in the group, if you're sharing photographs. I'd like to give a prize for whoever finishes one the quickest. That would be good. And also for those of you who are experienced, if you're really helping other people in the group and supporting and giving encouragement and tips, that would be really good. And I'll give a prize for that as well. So I've now got my guide on there. Now I've nearly run out of lapping cane. So what I do is I get another piece ready, and it's quite a good idea to do this while you've still got quite a bit left. So I've left my fid in with that stitch. So that stitch, excuse me, just gone in. Now I take my new cane and I thread it through the same hole. So you've got 2 pieces coming through at the same place, and I pull it almost all the way through. So I'm leaving at each end. I've got my old piece that's finishing off, and I've got my new bit. So I'm going to pull my old piece really tight, and the new bit, I'm going to put it over the last stitch. Holding my thumb on, I'm going to tuck it, twist it and tuck it round like that, and push it flat. And this is why it's quite good if it's wet, because it will do a neat little fold, and then I can thread it through, back through the other previous stitches, and that will get hidden as I come round and round with more straw. That will actually be hidden. Now with my old bit, so now that means that my new one is nice and secure. So what I'll do now is I'll pull out the fid and I'll go in for my next stitch, and I will thread through again both pieces of lapping cane. It's good at this early stage to use the shorter pieces of cane, because otherwise you can be fiddling around, pulling and threading through, and it can get knotted, it can get caught up, it can be really awkward. There we go, and I've got a bit of a jam there. Right, here we go. So I'm pulling through both pieces, the old one, which is nearly used up, and the new one. So I'm going to pull the new one right round, pull it tight. And now what I'll do is exactly what I had done with the new one, but with the old one, I will just tuck it to the last stitch, going back, and push it back through. There we go. And pressing it down so that it goes flat. And there we go. So now what I've done is I'm ready to get stitching. I can be adding more straw as I go, and I can be carrying on with my stitching. So there we go. And this is how to make your starter. So that's a nice secure starter. So if you've got any questions, type them in here. If you're watching on replay, do #replay. Let me know where you are. I'd love to know where you are in the world. Obviously, if you're in America, you'll be catching it later. I will save this and I'll post it up in the group so that you can see it. So do ask questions. I'll be keeping an eye on the group. I'll be answering questions. You can watch this as many times as you like. And there we go. Excuse me. Maybe I've got a bit of hay fever here in my shed with the straw. So there's your starter for making a skep. Now that is really nice and rigid. It's probably one of the best ones I've done for a while. And I love, there's a master skep maker who I will be interviewing during the webinar, and he's called Chris Parks, and he's been making skeps for years, and he keeps his bees in skeps. And he has this lovely phrase. He says, if you make a skep well, you should be able to dance a jig on the top of it. It will hold your weight. So let's hope we can all make good, strong skeps. And isn't it amazing that just out of something so simple that you can make a good, rigid basket that can become a home for the bees? So take a look. If you should have all had the links, if you want to buy a kit, if you want any more information about how to get the materials, if you've got your kit and you're still not quite sure what's what, just put questions in. And then I will see you same time tomorrow, 10 a.m. And then we'll be doing more stitching. And I'll also show you the next stage, which is how to curve. So you'll be familiar with the sort of traditional skep shape, but then, or like this, where you have it more as a cone. But more often people are doing flat bottom skeps, because then you could add another one on top. You can actually have supers, so you could be working them more like traditional or like wooden beehives. So I'll be showing you how to do the curve, how far you need to go out if you're going to do a flat one, so that then you can decide what kind of shape you want to do. You might even want to do an exotic curvy skep. This is up to you. The whole point of this challenge is so that you can learn all the basics, make a skep over a weekend, and I will see you tomorrow and see how you're all going. So thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. and I'd love to see what you've actually managed to do today. Okay, see you tomorrow.